All right, so I am going to introduce my friend Lisa Skye, and she is a Floridian New Yorker. She had a career in hospitality where she worked for the very famous Danny Meyer, who you guys probably know from Setting the Table, and he was kind of the precursor to unreasonable hospitality. She was the director and leader of the Manhattan B&I, which became the fourth largest in the world. So this girl knows networking. She was the second employee at WeWork, so you can find her on Hulu, on Netflix. I super enjoyed the morning when I turned on my Netflix and it was Lisa's face up there when they were promoting the movie or the docu-series. Yep. And we're both in the book, The $1 Billion Loser. Interestingly, we're both in there talking about how WeWork wouldn't be able to scale community. And we were right.
I know that.
Yeah, cool. Totally. And she founded one of the first wellness-focused co-working brands in the world in 2016, and it grew to over 100,000 square feet in 2 locations. And she is still on the board, but currently, you know what? She kind of took a break, imagine this, to take care of her health and wellness, and now she's just figuring out what her next dream is going to be.
Nurturing my inner goddess is my full-time job. That's what
I like to say. Amazing.
It's true. Thanks, Liz. Okay, so this is my friend Liz, who I was totally a fangirl of back in 2013 when I met her. She was born in Binghamton, New York, and then after stints in Vermont and Virginia, she moved to Austin, Texas at 16. So many people here from Austin, which has been so cool to make the connection. She spent 14 years working at Dell. Maybe you guys have heard of Dell. She worked her way up from literally being the lowest level salesperson to being the highest level salesperson when she left to become an entrepreneur. But first, she did her Eat, Pray, Love tour in Italy for 1 year. In 2008, which is when we just discovered this last night, I did an Eat, Pray, Love tour in 2008 also for 5 months. So we have that in common as well. She launched a co-working company called Link in 2010 in Austin, Texas. And that's when there were literally maybe 50 co-working spaces in the entire world, which has obviously changed now 13 years later. She held her first Juicy conference in Austin in 2012. Juicy is an acronym, GCUC, so it's the Global Co-working Unconference. She's now hosted 35 conferences around the world, which is amazing, from London to Sydney to Taipei to Sao Paulo to Chicago, where I got to MC day 1 in April, which was super fun. She sold Link in 2019 and it had 3 locations to totally good timing, to Common Desk, which was later acquired and is now run by WeWork, and a guy named Nick Clark. And it made her the first woman to successfully exit a co-working brand, which is amazing. Yes, big snaps and claps for Liz. And she recently went to grad school and she got a degree in foresight, which is why she constantly tells me I cannot buy property in Miami because It's going to be underwater soon. I like to say, okay, what does your crystal ball say? She hates the term crystal ball. You'll soon find that out also. And so Liz is really known for her unwavering commitment to our industry, the co-working industry, and her ability to really forecast the future, and for also being a tireless advocate for mental health and wellness in the workplace, which resonates hugely with me. And so I like to say it's kind of like we were having pillow talk last night. Like, basically these guys are like just in this room with us right now. Like, pretend we're just gonna have a conversation about co-working and the things we normally do when we're not in front of an audience, and you guys will just imagine yourselves in bed with us, basically.
Perfect.
Wonderful, Andre, perfect. Okay, so that said, the things we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about co-working, the term co-working versus flex office. We're going to talk about building community, health and wellness, and creating a sense of belonging at work, and also why co-working is going to thrive. So, Liz, let's get to it and learn a little bit first, I guess, about what
these guys
in the audience.
Okay, so how many of you know what co-working is? Okay, I think that's almost everybody. Okay. And just so you know, FYI, there's no dash in co-working. We like to be together. And it's not co-work, it's co-working, because you're doing something. How many of you currently work out of a co-working space? Okay, a good amount. And how many of you work from home at least 1 day a week? Oh my God, everybody? Great, pretty much. And How many of you have been or know somebody that's been affected by loneliness, addiction, or has considered suicide? Yeah, 100%. So sorry for the downer, but that's just the way it goes. So co-working is a place where people go to work together in a community, period. Flex office is a term that has come up recently. It was developed by the real estate world, and that's their way of doing co-working. And all it is flexible lease terms. So if you see a space that's flex office, it's probably bullshit. So seek out the co-working spaces because that's where you should find community and belonging.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it just flex office term is sort of more like feels corporate, whereas co-working, for me, I was the second employee at WeWork, and it was amazing for me because just also like sort of non sequiturs to how I got to where I am, but the way I met Adam is a really cool story. I was a leader in this global business networking organization called BNI. I led these networking meetings at 7 a.m. for 10 years in a row. I was in the mortgage business initially when I went into that networking organization. And so I was in the mortgage seat in my chapter. One morning I went in, I was the president of the chapter leading the meetings, but I knew I wanted to leave the mortgage business. So I went in and I basically said, I'm opening the mortgage seat. I don't know what I'm going to do next. I'm the president, so I'm not going to leave the chapter, but I'm going to lean into the community for opportunities. And these are the things I'm good at. I don't know what I'm going to do next. That morning, our financial advisor brought a guest named Gilad, who brought someone named Adam Newman. And so Adam and I ended up chatting after the meeting, and he said, well, what are you going to do next? And I said, I don't know. I want to do something that lights me up. I love bringing people together, creating community. He said, I'm going to do this thing called WeWork. I just took this building down in Soho. You should come check it out. And 5 days later, I started as their second employee. But I think the way that relates to the nomenclature here is that I've often said, because sometimes we differ a little bit on our viewpoints and obviously experiences of co-working, I feel that WeWork transformed the definition because by definition, co-working is a large open room where people are working together or space. Whereas now, because by design, WeWork created the windowed office for everyone, right? So glass enclosed offices where you felt like you were co-working, even if someone was 6 offices away from you down the hall, versus traditional flex office space, commercial office space where it's a sheetrock wall. You could be there burning the midnight oil at 11 o'clock and you feel totally isolated and lonely. But in co-working, you feel like, oh, I'm not the only crazy person here at midnight, and knock, 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 hey, what are you guys doing in there? Or who do you use for CPA or marketing or resources? And we'll get to that a little bit later about that. How do you actually create a community? But so that's for me at the heart of what is co-working, right? It's like it's a space where there's a feeling, where there's a heartbeat almost.
Yeah, and that's why we said, you can't buy it, you have to build it. Because that's why like a company like Regis, which is now IWG, will never figure this out because you can't point to it, right? It's something you have to build, it's something you have to nurture, it's something you have to grow.
That's a perfect segue into the next section, which is all about how do you build community?
How do you build community?
How do you build community? So there's for me, the two references of where in my life, I wish I could have this like headphone. I'm like, this microphone is like weighing me down. There are 2 places in my life where I feel like I've built the most community, and that was in BNI and then with WeWork, but then subsequently when I launched my own shared office space business. And so when I think about like what is that secret sauce, that special ingredient that really created the sense of community, and this is why not to call it with Ranit, but Ranit talked about like what is that special something, and you said community is really all of you. It's the people who create the community, which is absolutely true. And I think that the extra special, like really secret ingredient is a community manager who is often, though, the founder, because the founder has the most heart and the most vision. But you can find community managers out there. I mean, Danny Meyer, is an icon in the industry because he was really great at finding 51 percenters, which are, 51 percenters are people who have the skills that you cannot teach. They naturally care about people. They naturally want to go above and beyond. They are insatiably curious, like me, about who, like a lot of you who I've talked to. Who are you? What do you do? Like Jaberis, who I sat next to. And he was like, why is he asking me what I do? Right? But I just want to know. I've been this way since I was little. And so I was that community manager at WeWork in the beginning. And with BNI, it really all started with me. And so if I wanted to have a group of people where everyone was coming at 7 a.m., I can't I can't on the mornings that I don't feel good not go. Unless I'm on my way to the hospital, I have to go. I can't show up and say, oh, I'm really tired, I didn't get a good night's sleep. I needed to bring my A game and my face. On the mornings, for 10 years, of course, there were mornings that I was like, oh, I really wish I could get away with wearing jeans this morning. I feel a little casual. And then I'm like, oh no, but the guest of a guest could be my next opportunity and lead to my next biggest client. I need to look the part. And so it really started with me at the front of the room as the leader who was setting the example. And so I think that in a true community, you have a community manager who is, I love this term, and I heard it in 2013 at the first Juicy conference that I attended. I think it was Tony Bacigalupo that used this term, accelerating serendipity. And I think that a community manager is someone who says, oh my gosh, Doreen is creating this amazing music. Oh, you're thinking about taking office with us? There's 3 people here who are in the music community. Come with me, knock, knock, knock. And like, oh, look, David is doing the same thing, or whatever it is, to create that connection. And all of a sudden, that's what happened in WeWork, is people would kind of do a double take, like with me, that I'm actually listening, right? And that I'm engaged, and that I'm interested in creating community and connections and opportunity. Because of course, if your business is thriving, you're paying the bills, you're paying the rent, the business is thriving, the community is thriving. It all connects together.
Yeah, and like I saw a lot of examples of how my community was really gelling. There's 3 specific examples that I'll go through really quickly. There was a gentleman who'd had a heart event at like Macworld, and he was morbidly obese. And he came to my co-working space and he said, I am in a really terrible place in my life. I need to lose 200 pounds immediately. I'm really scared. I've turned to veganism overnight, and I need to work around other people. I was like, okay. And I went and pulled my community manager, and I was like, okay, so we've got this guy who needs our help, and like he wanted to go smash his microwave, and because he thought that was part of what was making him sick, so he like recorded this video of him smashing his microwave and was showing it to people, and like he just invited us into his journey. And I'm happy to report that man lost over 300 pounds, partially because he was in a community where he felt connection. And he got a girlfriend and has a couple dogs and lives in the suburbs. And that's because part of the thing was, he was in a co-working space. There was I was closed on the weekends, and a woman called me and said, can I please get into Link? And I was like, sure, absolutely. And I drove up there and I met her, and she said, I'm going through a divorce. My house, like we've gone into a duplex and it's super tiny, and I want to kill my soon-to-be ex-husband. My kids are crazy. This is where I feel the most peace. I just need to sit in here for a couple hours. I was like, absolutely. And so she sat in there for a couple hours. Afterwards, we walked around and talked for a while, and she basically said, I think you saved me from a mental breakdown. And I was like, that's cool. And then I had another friend who had been off on vacation, and she stopped by Link, and I was like, oh, well, where's your bag? Aren't you going to get to work? She's like, no, I just came by to say hi. I missed y'all. I was like, shit's working.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. There's a book called Good to Great. A guy named Jim Collins wrote it. Has anybody read Good to Great?
So good.
It was a book that my father gave to all of his employees also, and I don't remember anything from the book except for one key point, which is that it's not, in business, it's not about getting the right people. It's about getting the right people in the right seats on the bus. And so, I feel like, how many in the room, when I say what's the number one challenge of entrepreneurs, is it personnel? Like, I feel like personnel, for our business is just like, finding the right person and people. And we've gone through a lot of people at Primary to try to find, and we now have a team that's been there 4 years, but sometimes approaching people in the team and really assessing what are their strengths, their weaknesses, and is there another seat on the bus that we can get them into versus just saying this isn't working and letting them go, I think is a super important point.
And I think actually the number one problem for entrepreneurs is probably stress.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but also hiring great people.
Yes, 100%. I think for me, to speak vulnerably, the irony for me. So after I left WeWork, it took me a couple of years to try to figure out. I knew I wanted to start my own company. The reason I left is because after a year, I find these stories still interesting, so I'm sharing about my story, just to bring the microphone back to me as I do. after a year of working with them, they were giving out employment contracts that had an 18-month non-compete. And we were 25 employees at the time. And I was the only one not willing to sign the non-compete. And so Adam called me in. I sat with him. I sat with Adam and Miguel together. I sat with Miguel for 3 hours on my own. It was a very difficult decision for me to make, but we were moving so quickly, so fast right away from the beginning. I mean, part of the story, right, in the documentaries is like, I met with Adam that afternoon for an hour. I met with he and Miguel for 3 hours on Friday, 7 o'clock Friday night. Adam walks me down onto Broadway or whatever that was, Lafayette, and said, okay, we want you to start on Monday. Basically to be the second employee after Miguel's brother Kyle. We're going to pay you $70,000 cash under the table, and we want to open the first 17 offices in 3 weeks, and we want to be full with a wait list. And I was like, okay, let me think about it. I will call you by Sunday, and I'll let you know. And of course, I was ready to leave the mortgage business, and so I called him on Sunday, and on it's in the books and documentaries, 8 o'clock on that Monday morning, he sent me an email that said, good morning, period, let's create the largest physical networked community on the planet. And there was no period, it was just like off to the races. And that was really an analogy for what it was. I booked all 170 offices in that first building. I mean, I was community manager, sales, tours, billing, booking, janitor. Our IT director was 16 years old, Joseph Fasone, who is a Forbes 30 under 30. I mean, a guy, he's now like 28 and has over 100-person employee, like tech company or fiber company. But he was like in algebra class when I needed to service someone. I can't tell our client that, so I'd be like in the data closet, like he'd be like in the bathroom at his high school, like, and we're like trying to fix someone issues. So
you probably don't know. I was the person who told Adam that I hated the physical social network because it just made me think of Mark Zuckerberg, and that's when he changed it to love what you do.
Oh, look at that! Look at you! Yeah. I mean, so I think that. I guess I just lost my.
Go back to health and wellness.
Go. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That actually brings me back to my point. So when I left. Well, exactly. And so I did decide, and it's related. So I did decide ultimately. I have a cookbook called I Love Corn. You can buy it on Amazon. Because I was in a leadership program where I created a cookbook that has 50 donated recipes by famous and award-winning chefs that are all about corn. And it was my way to raise money for a charity that supports children and young adults who've lost a parent. And I did that to honor my father after losing him suddenly 20 years ago. The book had gotten picked up by an international publisher at that time, and so I did need to work on the manuscript, so it was kind of a legit reason for me to, that's how we framed my leaving, was that I was going to leave to go work on the manuscript, which I did. But really, it was because I said, I'll sign a 6-month non-compete, but I'm here next to you and Miguel. I'm honing all of these skills. I'm learning how to do everything. I could be very happy going and opening 2 or 3 of my own. I don't need to take over the world. And I think I vividly remember saying that. And then, look what Adam did. I mean, they took over the world, really. WeWork, was the pioneer.
They were great. They were great for getting the term co-working adopted by the world. Totally. But actually now they're kind of dragging us down, because it's really hard to raise money right now in co-working because they're slowly imploding.
Well, and plus post-pandemic world is I think a little bit of a challenge as well. Okay, but back to the health and wellness.
Oh, yeah.
So when I left, I knew, when I was with WeWork, I said, this is the type of company that I want to own. I always knew I wanted to own my own business, and I just didn't know how it would be different. And it took a couple of years, but we came up with the name Primary because the philosophy is if you make your primary focus yourself, your body, your well-being, everything in your life, including your business, can thrive. And so on site at Primary, it is arguably, we're told, one of the most beautiful spaces in New York City. We have a beautiful studio where we host yoga, meditation, boot camp classes. We have showers, locker rooms, a healthy food and juice cafe. There's lots of live greenery, preserved moss walls. They say looking at something green and nature-related for 5 minutes a day can lower your blood pressure, makes you feel focused. And in New York City, we're like, I know. Thank you. Tell everyone already. Thank you. Jeez, that's what I'm trying to do. Subtle, exactly. But I remember though fundraising, because I had a $6 million seed from someone who was a seed investor at WeWork also, which was the beginning of a nightmare on a lot of levels for me. But I subsequently raised $3.5 million, and I remember doing a lot of pitches, and one prospective investor said to me, oh, I really like the wellness thing you're doing. It's like very on trend. And I just was like, that's not our investor. B, like on trend, I hope that this is a transformation for the world, like not a trend. So Hence health and wellness. Let's talk
Yeah.
about health and wellness.
Let's talk about it. So in I think it was 2017 that the Sanjay Gupta article came out in Harvard Business Review about the loneliness epidemic, and that really woke me up. And so I went on stage at Juicy and was like, guys, mental health, like we can help with this. Because if you think about it, you spend the majority of your day at work. You don't spend it at home, you spend it at work. So the place where you really need connection is during the day, right? Because at night you're with your family, you're with your friends, you're doing things. And then I watched a really amazing video. It was a TED Talk on addiction, which if you just Google TED Talk and addiction, this talk comes up because it has like 27 million views. And it says the opposite of addiction is connection. And I know that to be true. I personally have been sober over 14 years. And thank you. And I learned so much about community and connection through the program of AA. And I mean, that is like the most holistic solution to the addiction problem in the world. It's fascinating. And so, I really became like a tireless advocate for we've got to pay attention to mental health, because I fully believe that if we can give people a place of belonging and connection and community, then they're not going to kill themselves. Then they're going to, have an opportunity to, just say hi to another human. Like, I would train my community managers, like, if you didn't make eye contact and shake a hand and acknowledge a human being when they walked in the door, we failed today. We failed. Because so many people are unseen, right? So many people are just going to go do their thing and close their door, and you can't let them do that. Like, we all have to take that initiative to, like, recognize people and look at them and see them, just see them. And that's like, it's so simple, and that can change the world.
Oh my God, I'm so inspired right now. Like, my whole soul is going, yes, it's so simple like that, right? It's like, but the best restaurateurs, the best anything in the world, right? It's this accumulation of all these little tiny details, right? We talk about this. I talk about this stuff we just actually last week I was in New York for 4 nights, and the first night I sat with our team and I brought everyone copies of Will Guidara's book Unreasonable Hospitality, which is excellent. I was looking
mandatory
through it.
reading for everybody.
Like, jot that down now. I'll put it into the feed. It's so good. Oh my gosh. And it's, look, some people I get is like kind of would say that it's a subscription to like the extreme end of hospitality, like going too far above and beyond. But it's an unbelievable like book full of illustrations of how they not just little surprise and delight, like wowed people with their experiences. And so the basic ways
you might have experienced here. Did anybody experience that?
This sense of connection, yeah, with everyone here. Yeah, totally, right? I mean, and I think, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my
How
God.
about this Yoko team?
Wait, where is Eden right now? Like, we need a standing ovation
Eden, oh
for
my
Eden
God.
at the end of this weekend. She's been so fucking amazing. Pardon my New York City
Because
French.
everybody, you know why? Because everybody feels like she's just doing it for you, and she's doing it for everybody.
Totally, for like 30 people, exactly. So, but to that point, that's what we were talking about on last Monday is like, it's the so basic, like, good morning, with icon. While I'm talking to someone else, because I've sat at the front desk of my business, of course, many times. And so good morning, and then I'm in a conversation here, and it's like, excuse me, bye, have a great night, good luck in that meeting tomorrow, like it's just and then this person sees the hospitality, that person feels the hospitality. And so, we didn't even put this into our notes to talk about hospitality per se, but I mean, it's a big part of what we have been talking about and what was at the last Juicy conference in Chicago, hospitality.
Yeah, I was opening up for Jamie Hudari of Industrious. He spoke there, and I was like, you know what? So here's the deal. So in Foresight, I studied Elon Musk a little bit. Love him or hate him, that dude gets shit done, and I love that. And like, I'm going to build a tunnel. Okay, and then he does. And so, like, he's a fascinating human from an execution standpoint, right? So in my research, I found out he's trying to change the atmosphere of Mars. Not Earth, Mars. Like, somewhere else in our solar system. And it, like, inspired me because I had figured out that coworking was in the wrong industry. We're in the real estate industry. which, by the way, is totally headed towards a crash. And so we're in the real estate industry, but like I don't meet a lot of people in real estate that I particularly like. And a lot of it is just like white men sitting at the top making a shit ton of money. And so I was like, but like, sure, we have real estate and we buy real estate, but what we really do is we take care of people. So we're in the hospitality industry. So I was like, everybody in here needs to go change their LinkedIn profile from real estate to hospitality. If you go look up any major co-working brand that's worth a shit, they now say they're in the hospitality industry.
And you and I, on your episode a couple years ago, when we predicted future predictions, we said hospitality is going to be the main differentiator in the years to come between operators, 100%. Yep.
Which is also how I met Leron, is I called him up and was like, we should have a podcast together.
Wait, I thought it was like through a Google ad or something like that.
Well, so what first happened was that he's really great at Facebook ads. And I guess because I'm sort of co-working obsessed, I kept getting served this Yoko ad. And so I looked it up and I was like, well, this place is amazing. And then here I am.
And here I am.
And then I brought her with me.
I was literally like, anybody know what I should do, where I should stay the last 3 weeks? She's like, come sleep with me at this place called Yoko. You can just do your thing while I'm going to this event. And she's like, oh, Lyra now knows who you are, and now he wants us to do a 40-minute talk. And so I went from like attending and being a fly on the wall to being up here, and like so humbled and grateful. Just a quick moment to say, like, I feel so in the presence of greatness. With all the speakers have been just fantastic, and it feels like massively high vibe energy here, and it's like exactly what I needed and wanted. And I hope that I can just leave a few additional pieces of gold from the stage, here today also. So, yeah. Yeah. It's true. I'm not shaking because that comes like right from my heart, right? It's dropped in. Okay, so statistics. So we want to just say out loud, I think that, so many recent studies online, 60% of Americans anyway are feeling lonely or reporting feeling lonely. And that increases the chance of stroke, heart disease, dementia. And by the way, one of the articles I looked at said, here are the solutions for loneliness. Host a party. Oh, bring people together. Number 2, plan a regular get-together. Oh, bring people together. Number 3, get to know a family. I don't know if that means like someone else's family, your family. I'm not kind of sure about that one. That was a little weird.
Find a family.
Your own family. Start a family. Go have sex. I don't know. Like, what are they trying to tell me?
So you have more sex.
Okay, number 4, run an errand together. Okay. Oh, number 5, reply to your texts.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And I love this one. Number 6, just look around you. Like literally, the recommendation is literally that simple. Like, look around you. Did you guys ever see that SNL episode with Kenan Thompson where he's like, I'm making a new dating app, and it's called Go Outside? He's like, you want to meet some people?
Go outside. But I mean, basically, I feel like all of the speakers were just building up to us because they all shared all these stats that just are like, yeah, we need connection. Yeah, we need connection. Yes, there's a huge problem. So I feel like...
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And, of course, then perfect for Yoko Village and your ethos and us being immersed in jungle here. The other stat that I saw was a Cornell study that says 10 minutes is like the minimum, but spending 10 minutes to 50 minutes in natural spaces improves mood, focus, physiological markers like blood pressure and heart rate. It said that it's not saying that, over 50 minutes, like there's no benefit, but that there's a plateau in terms of the amount of benefit. So somewhere between 10 and 50 minutes is like the sweet spot of, daily, like go outside, go on a walk, do the things to connect to nature.
There was a really cool study that was done. I heard about it on NPR where they took videos of nature and they played them in a prison. And then they interviewed the inmates and said, how's this going? And they'd already seen all the data that they were doing in like ridiculously better. And they were saying things like, it's really helpful because when I'm going to bed at night, I kind of just replay that video in my head. And they saw like their blood pressure went down and they felt better. And like, it was insane, just showing a video. That's all you have to do.
I know, I love that. And I saw some article or stat or something somewhere where it said that just putting a plant on your desk right, like increases productivity,
Yeah.
right? Because again, it's that opportunity to look at something green.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I've had like 20 different offices because if someone ever wanted to book my office, I'm like, yeah, take it, I'll move, and so then co-working spaces, that's how it works. But the first thing I would do when I move into a new office is I would put up my, like my image of Oprah and Frida and all my inspirational quotes and my plants and my crystals and my oils and like all the things that, like sometimes things were really stressful, right? And someone would come to my door and I would be like, before you speak, hold on. And I would open 2 essential oils and I would be like, okay, ask me or tell me what's happening with the construction.
So funny.
It's true. These are like the ridiculous ways that, welcome to the life of an entrepreneur. Can any of you identify with the stress levels and like intensity that I'm talking about? Yeah, so intense.
So let's talk about, because we said we're going to talk about why co-working will thrive in the future. That's why. Because we're providing connection, because we're providing community, because we're providing belonging. The other spaces simply aren't. And then just back to real estate, because everybody said, not going back to the office. There are so many people that are choosing co-working. And so co-working is actually thriving right now. Yes, like WeWork's imploding because they don't really build community. So the spaces that build community will thrive. But in the next 3 years, the majority of U.S. leases are going to come due. And that is going to cause tons of spaces to be turned back. Thus, the banks are going to freak out. And we will see a big global dip in the economics of the world.
But WeWork is not imploding because they're not
No.
creating community. I
They
mean,
made a bunch of bad decisions.
yeah, by the way, so I got asked to, here's some more shameless like self-promotion, but, and like fun parts of my story. I was asked to come back to WeWork 2 times. And the second time was in January 2015, right? Adam called me they called it the Galactic Headquarters at 222 Broadway. And Adam had this, this grandiose like entrance, and you go up these big stairs and he had this big office, and there was like a ticker on his computer that was showing the member count that was increasing, every second. So globally, they were valued at $12 billion at that point. And Rebecca came in, oh, Lisa Skye, and, gave a hug, and then they whispered about a private jet, something, how they're getting to Miami that weekend. And then, she walked out, and I said, okay. And we sat down, and he said, so we've had a lot of success, since you were here. You like my Israeli impression, by the way? I spent a lot of time. Someone said, I thought you were Israeli yesterday. I said, no, just in commercial real estate in New York City. So we've had a lot of success since you were here. I said, yes, congratulations. It's remarkable. Truly, it was remarkable, what you've created. And I said, so why am I here? And he said, because, I feel like there's something missing. And I said, tell me more. He said, I feel like there's this feeling of connection and community that is missing. I feel like the people who work in the offices here don't know how to take advantage of the perks and the benefits and things we provide. And the people who work for us don't know the names of the people who are here, the companies that they are, what they do. And I want to see if you can create that same feeling of connection and community that we had in the first 2 locations when you were with us. And that was when my big voice was like, if he thinks you can create something missing in his $12 billion company, it's time to start your own company.
Which is so funny because when he came to Austin, because I had him speak at my first conference, and he was like, Lise, I don't know, mine's not as good. He was like, you need to come work for me. And I was like, I'm like, do I want to build your dream or my dream? And then he said, I'm going to have hundreds of locations all over the world. And I said, well, how are you going to scale community? And he was like, that's why you're going to come work for me. And I was like, yeah. And then he said, if you don't come work for me, I will crush you.
Just like the Apple We Crash series, like the scene with him with Jamie Hodari on the private jet where he says, I'm going to crush you also.
Yeah.
Oh, Adam.
And by the way, he didn't.
He had some character flaws. I mean, look, people, of course, there's a German documentary coming out this summer that I'm in, and I'm in all the books and podcasts and everything because everybody wants to know what it was like to work with him in the beginning. And I always say it was remarkable. I mean, he's a remarkable human. I mean, the way that I would follow him around, and I followed him around for like 4 or 5 tours, and then I was, he was off fundraising, and I was filling, and creating the first community. But he would say, and imagine looking out this window and I'm talking to the city and we're going to make it into a park and you can have your lunch out there and down in the basement we're going to make a gym and you can take care of your body and blah, blah, blah. And did the park ever happen? I don't think so. But, it was like he was masterful at creating this vision and excitement for people. And by the way, a lot of it did become a reality. But so what I was going to say about why I think the bottom line, like why WeWork is imploding right now is because I remember certainly all of us in New York City, fellow operators were like, how can they be signing deals at $70 a foot and make any money? Well, now we know they were not really making, money. And, they just weren't building in a way that was truly sustainable. And so I think, because people, of course, we both are getting asked that question a lot, like, what does this mean for the industry? And I have basically been saying that I think that locally in all the markets that they're in, they'll go to a lot of the operators that are there. And I think that the established operators, especially the ones that are, have 5 to 10 locations or whatever, or the industriouses who have now done it sort of more globally, and they'll just come in as operators. Or what we've continued to see over the last decade, landlords will come in and say, I'm going to start my own co-working brand, and they'll start to convert the space to a new brand that they create as well.
Okay, so where is this all going?
So, are we going to pretend like we have 2 minutes left?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I think, the bottom line for me is it's in hiring the right people. Definitely read Danny Meyer. I'm going to drop them into the group chat if that's okay. Danny Meyer's book, Setting the Table, is excellent. There are a lot of people in the hospitality, like restaurant industry, that use that as a Bible, have read it like 6, 7, 8 times. But also this new book that Will Guidara, who bought 11 Madison Park from Danny Meyer, Unreasonable Hospitality, is excellent book, really about being of service to your clients and your people. But the right people, it's about finding, it's a little bit unicorns, right? It's be the unicorn yourself, right? Be the change you want to see in the world. Gandhi had it right? And find the people like you who really subscribe to the vision, who can go and create the magic.
Yeah, and I see it as my goal in this life, business-wise, is to proliferate co-working. Like, that's what I'm about. So I'm going to continue to help people open co-working spaces. I'm going to next level the existing owners because, I really feel like we have a moral obligation to provide spaces of belonging because there isn't anyone in the world that isn't untouched by the loneliness epidemic, by depression, by addiction. And honestly, the suicide rates are absolutely abysmal. Pick up the phone, call people, check in on them. I know everybody right now is thinking about somebody they haven't heard from in a while. Call them up. Don't text them. Call them up and be like, how are you doing? We just got to get back to some of the basics of, looking at each other, saying hello to each other, and it can just start with us.
Oh, my God, I'm so inspired to say one more thing, and then you can say a really funny one-liner at the end that we have planned.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to totally
serious.
Spontaneous.
Yeah.
It's going to be totally spontaneous. But so this is my leader in a global business networking organization hat coming out. The best way in part of a community, and you can do this to the fellow people that you know in a community. Sometimes people will come to you and say, how's your business going? And you guys are just talking specifically about your respective businesses, but before the conversation ends and, on phone calls or in person, just say, so what else is going on, in your life? What else is going on in your world?
Tell me more.
But what else is going on in your life? It's a little more open-ended where now they might tell you, well, I've been having some back problems, or, I'm dealing with this thing with my children. It gives you an opportunity to be of service to them, not just through your respective business, but to really start to train the people in your life to know that you are there for them on all levels in the ways that you can be, and to provide for them. And I think that that's a big part of the important fabric of what creates that feeling of belonging and that people care who are around you.
And if you would like Lisa and I to come to your exotic destination and talk about co-working or anything else, we're here for you.
Thank you. Question.
I think you both should have your own morning show. I should do the music, and maybe we can have a
You can do the music.
for the community and then worldwide.
All right, we can write our opening song.
I can do that.
Do you have a question? No. Oh, he's coming. Oh, he's hosting. Awesome. We have our host.
Game show. Yoko game show.
On Amazon. Look up I Love Corn and Lisa Skye. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Jess, your talk was amazing last night. Like I'm still
We're
so
looking for you
moved
to be
from
like,
it.
damn.
So good, so awesome.
Well, I'm so glad you brought up loneliness because I actually, that's part of the cage animal hypothesis is the epidemic of loneliness. I cut all those slides because it was too long.
We got you.
I did not plan this, so I belong to a co-working space too, and our founder always says these are the co-workers you choose, which isn't always true in the workplace. So it's such an amazing part of my life because I was definitely very lonely for a while.
Awesome.
So great.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, so, I worked with WeWork for so many years. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. So many, we did the management of all of their buildings. And it started good, but very unprofitable. And then when they tried to go to the profitable side, then it was not good anymore. There was no sense of community. All the parties and things we used to organize, it was gone. And then in some point, it became very corporate. So all kind of big companies would take spaces and that it was gone. My question is, how do you make profitable co-working space? But then it became profitable. When the corporates were involved, then it became profitable. So my question is, how do you create profitable co-working space with this sense of community?
Yeah, I mean, there's brands all over the world that are profitable co-working spaces. Like Hub Australia is one that's really good. There's Work Bar in Boston. There's the Office Group in London and Fora. It's just basic business principles. I mean, I really think Massimo's son actually did a huge disservice to Adam's probably ego and personality by saying, do more, this isn't enough, keep going, do more, because he was just feeding him, and they went and made a ton of horrible real estate deals. And, honestly, I don't find glass offices to be very communal. They were really small. I think they had some intrinsic design flaws as well. So there are plenty of spaces that are profitable, not the vast majority.
So you would say that at the moment, the majority of co-working spaces are not.
The majority of big ones are not. But then, look at Regis. IWG is slaying it right now. I mean, they are making so much money, it's insane.
I just have a comment about IWG. So IWG owns the brand Regis, and then Regis, as a result of WeWork coming into the market, created a secondary brand called Spaces, which is their more co-working, feel-good, less corporate, pretty brand. But I think, one of the things that we would say when we were fundraising for primary is that Regis actually did better during the last economic downturn, because what happened in the market was that larger companies that were locked into these 10, 15, 20-year leases were slashing, their expenses by getting rid of an entire space and then seeking out these flexible office, hence the advent of flex office terms. And so I think that also during downturns, part of the structuring of each individual location, I'm getting a little bit into nuances, but with individual LLCs, is it gave them the ability to renegotiate terms with those landlords, and so to get them into a better spot. Because ultimately, what we say in the industry is, how can you be financially successful? It all comes down to the underlying terms on the lease. If you don't have the right base rent, you're just going to have small margins or flat margins.
Yeah, and literally, I talk to so many people call me up and they're like, I'm going to open a co-working space. I'm like, that's great. And they're like, I've already found the property. And I'm like, that's your first mistake. Because they fell in love with something before running the numbers, right? It's just you've got to run the numbers. You've got to make sure you're running a business. This is not a, social experiment. This is a business, and you need to run it profitably. And you had a question.
But I want to say one other thing because, Industrious, who's kind of been like arguably on the, but that's what I was going to say, is that they're like on the coattails of WeWork, but the majority of all of their deal structures are management deals. So they're partnering with the landlords. But so it just means that the margins are, very, very small, if not flat. It is a tough business. I mean, yeah.
So 2 questions. One is dovetailing further into the necessities of building out a profitable boutique co-working space. And also, what are some of the other non-obvious, like masterful traits that Adam had? Like what were some of those magical things that he did bring to life that made him the positive leader that he was in many ways?
When I spent some time with him because he was trying to hire me, and he's a force. The man is a force of nature. And when I talked to one of my advisors, when I was like, should I go work for him? And he's like, well, how do you feel? And I was like, I feel like I'm doing a deal with the devil. That's honestly how I felt. And that's when I decided, and also, again, I didn't want to build his dream. I wanted to build my dream. So, but he's dynamic, he's vivacious, and I've met a lot of leaders. He's in a class of his own. And he was also relatable and human. He introduced me to his daughter. He was super pissed the second time I met him because I didn't realize that he'd lost 15 pounds.
Really? But he's like 6'6". You can't tell when 6'6" people lose 15 pounds. Yeah. And what was the first question that you asked, Jackson?
Just deeper advice. I mean, you mentioned running it like a business, not just being in love with the dream, making sure the fundamentals are there, but seeing what else are just your insights into what makes a great co-working space viable, from the community creation to the business side. Just a succinct answer on that, and then further into Adam's leadership is very interesting. Thank you.
I joke that you have to have HVAC and internet are the baseline fundamentals.
Coffee.
Coffee
is
coffee.
incredible.
I haven't had any coffee this morning yet. But so, it sounds ridiculous, but HVAC and internet from a business standpoint, if people can't, HVAC is hot and cold, people will suffer a little bit, but if they can't connect to the internet, they're like, why the hell do I have an office here? And so it sounds silly, but having really, really, really good, there should be no reason that the internet should ever be down ever in your space. You should have effective backup and all of that. So that's very businessy, but true.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of business plans because I think they show you what you don't know. They show you where there's some potential places where you don't have all the answers and you need the numbers. And if the numbers don't work, don't open. You've got to be able to make those numbers work, but you can give yourself a good 18-month runway. But I hope you open a co-working space.
In Miami. So
in Miami, make it wellness focused.
Miami and Colorado is what we're looking. So,
nice. Yeah. Awesome. Good for you. We'll see you at the next Juicy.
Looking forward to that.
Awesome. I think we need to wrap up, or did you have a question? Sure. So I went to an unconference at South by in 2011. It was a half-day unconference, and I met all the people I'd been stalking around the world. And that was so fun to have them all in one room. And then, but I learned so much from my peers. And I was like, this is incredible. And I was watching the last panel up on the stage, and it was four dudes. And I was like, wow, that is not who I would put on stage. And I was like, whoever starts this co-working conference is going to be a powerful person because they're going to pick the people on stage. And that should be me. And so I had helped out a lot in the conference. And so that summer, the people who put it on, it was a company called Loose Cubes that Steve Case had invested in, but they were finding free workspace. Again, not profitable, so that didn't work. And they were like, hey, we don't want to do this anymore, but we think it needs to happen, and you seem to be super into it, so why don't you take it over? And I was like, okay. And so I was like, well, I definitely need to rename it. So I was like, the Global Co-working Unconference Conference, which is GCUC, so it's Juicy. And it's been really amazing. It is really fun. Calling up, I can call anybody in the industry and be like, hey, I need you to come talk, or I need to introduce you to somebody. And it's been a really, really fun journey. I never thought I would be in the event space conference business, but I am. And it's really fun. We just did one in Australia. We're in Toronto in September. We're in London in November. We want to do more international, so we're actually looking at doing one in Japan in 2024. But yeah, it's like you gotta like. I think the thing I like about that story is that moment of sitting in the room and being like, I could be this person. Like you gotta like pay attention to those moments and embrace them and go do them. Like I was telling somebody here last night about how I was watching Michael Dell on stage telling me what I needed to go sell next. And I was sitting there and I was looking at Michael Dell and I was like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be the person on stage. And I looked down at my own lap and I was like, he would never sit here. And then I turned to my friend Patrick and I said, I'm quitting. And he said the perfect thing back. He said, no, you're not. So I quit in a week. But those, like, capture those moments, you know, you're probably having some here where you're like, well, I could go open a co-working space, or I could, you know, help bring belonging to the world. Like, pay attention to those. That's like your gut telling you you can do it.
You can sit 6 minutes in the ice bath today, Lisa.
All right, well, we've spent enough time. We got to go.